strength and our Redeemer. Amen. For those of you who don't already know, my undergrad degree is actually in chemistry. And every once in a while, I get to use my degree. And today is one of those days. We're going to do a bit of a science experiment as we talk about salt. You know, when we normally talk about salt, we're talking about the kind that you cook with, kind that you eat, sodium chloride. Scientifically, there are lots of other kinds of salts, but this is the one that we tend to be talking about. So salt, sodium chloride, is an ionic compound, and it's when two substances of opposite charges come together, and that's how their bond is made. Without being too geeky, think like a magnet sticking together. Two poles of magnet, plus and minus. You have sodium, a cation with a +1 charge in this case. And you have chlorine, chloride, an anion, -1 in this case. And the two are very happy to stick together. -1 and +1. The empty electron shell in the chlorine and the extra valence electron, no, other way around. The empty shell in the sodium and the extra electron in the chlorine add together, and they have two complete valence shells, and they are happy to be together. This is not a permanent bond. If you've ever made salt water, you know that it's pretty easy to split that bond and put it into solution. You have sodium ions, chlorine ions floating around in the water. But water does not cause salt to lose its saltiness. For if you evaporate the water, what are you left with? Salt. They sit in solution, but they're happy to go back together when the water is gone. And you might, at the dinner table, not use the simple salt shaker, but a fancy grinder, or even fancy salt. And so if you know that if you use one of these grinders, the smashing, the cutting, does not cause salt to lose its saltiness. It simply breaks the bigger molecules down to one sodium, one chlorine together. It remains sodium chloride, it's still salt. You can get big cubes of salt, you can get very tiny cubes of salt, but salt remains salty. If you've ever burned or tried to melt salt, you know that salt has a very high melting point. It's not very easy to make melt. It has an even higher evaporation point. You can't make salt gas very easy. When you burn it, what you tend to do is burn the sodium off, and you get a bright orange flame, and you're left with the chlorine going into a different solution. So you've made it not salty, but you don't technically have salt anymore. So even fire does not cause salt to lose its saltiness. Water doesn't cause salt to lose its saltiness. Pressure doesn't cause salt to lose its saltiness. Fire doesn't cause salt to lose its saltiness. As far as I know, there is nothing that can happen that where salt remains salt, but is no longer salt. There are, however, plenty of instances where salt remains salt, but it is ineffective as salt. It no longer preserves or flavors things the way that it's supposed to. It's just like life. Sometimes we get mixed up with things. This is a spice called za'atar. It's one of my favorite from the Middle East. And it is good on its own. You want to take a sniff? It's pretty good. It's great on lamb or on pita with a little bit of lebna, which is Middle Eastern strained yogurt. But too much of a good thing mixed in with the salt makes it less able to do everything that it's meant to do. I'm no longer going to make salt gargle with this salt. I might put it on some chicken, and it still will salt and flavor. But when we get mixed up with too much of one thing, we are kept from doing all that we are meant to do. Let alone if we add something not so good. Here I have some mulch from outside. And if I add some mulch into this salt, now I'm not even going to use it to flavor my chicken. This salt is rendered ineffective. It's still salty. Does anybody want it to try? So take my word for it, it's still salty, but it's no longer effective as salt. This is the metaphor that Jesus is talking about. We are salt. But when we get mixed up with too much of a good thing, or a little bit, really any amount, of a bad thing, although we don't lose our saltiness, we are ineffective as salt. No matter what we do, no matter how many commandments we break, no matter how many times we sleep in and miss church, no matter how bad we are still salt. God still loves us. But this jar, this state of salt, is still something for us to worry about happening in our lives. For we can get too mixed up with a good thing, too much work, too many hobbies. We get distracted and we forget to be effective as salt. We get mixed up with things that aren't so good: jealousy, hatred, divisions. We are still salt, but we are no longer effective as God's salt in the world. At times we get diluted down, we get dissolved in worries and prejudice. We are still salt, but we're not nearly as effective. There is nothing that can break the bonds between us and God. There is nothing that can keep us from being salt. But there's plenty that can keep us from living out our lives as salt. We remain salty, but we're no longer good to flavor anything. We no longer are able to preserve in the same way. I pray that you always remember you are salt. and that you find ways, you find people, you find activities that help to evaporate the water away so that you are again effective as salt. I pray that you remember that there's still salt in here. I am not going to pick through here and try to get clean salt again. But God does every day. God washes us clean, picks out the dirty chunks, and makes us salty. It's only through God's grace that this dirty salt is seen again as clean salt, as it was made and as it will always be. So let us go out today full of God's grace and promise, remembering that we are salt, and to act salty. And as the Pope put it to Congress, let us be salty and restore hope, right wrongs, maintain commitments, and thus promote the well-being of individuals and peoples. That is the way that we say in the ELCA, let us do God's work with our hands. God made you salty. There is nothing that can cause you to lose your saltiness. So have salt in yourselves and be at peace.